it is difficult to be a Black painter um, in America right now, and way before, obviously, but in my spoiled generation, you can get pigeonholed by telling Black stories. And it's funny because not everyone knows them, but here's the deal. If you're painting Black people on canvas, right, people look at it as if it's like just the same old story about Black people. But really, you're telling a whole different story. Moved to Alabama probably in '93. Mother lived in Tuscaloosa with my family who started Dreamland. I grew up in the restaurant. Like when I came home on Fridays, I'd have to go into the restaurant behind the bar and say hello to her, talk about homework. And then Dreamland took off. I got comfortable, I guess, in the restaurants from being around her. Just talking in front of customers and paying attention, like not paying attention to other people, just knowing it was like our connection. But my mom always made sure I experienced art, and our house was covered in art, like scary paintings of James Brown and Miles Davis, like scary as shit. Like it was like, the Cosby Show was also a huge introduction. I guess I can't say that, but whatever. Cosby Show had excellent art collection. It rotated constantly, like the famous procession piece with like the Black family walking down with the umbrellas. I'd copy that all the time. Like we were seeing Black art in America actually on TV. When I started cooking, I started cooking because a bunch of punk kids started cooking, and I knew that was an easy way to get a job. It was like dishwashing, you become a line cook, you get free food, and you get a little paycheck. I just thought it was a job because I always use it as survival to move places. When I graduated college and left Bottega and went to San Diego and started working out west, because back then, California cuisine was like the way Korean food is now. Like the way kimchi is now. Eating a fig wrapped in prosciutto was that in the 90s. It was like so hot, and farmers markets were a thing that wasn't a thing. So it was exciting, but I remember getting my first job at Chez Panisse. 2 years, I was homeless in San Francisco while I worked at one of the best restaurants in the United States. I paid $1,000 a month to park my car, and I'd stayed in an abandoned house next to Gilman Street, where like Rancid and Op Ivy and all those dudes are from. And there was a bunch of cooks randomly, and a bunch of like punk kids who crashed at this house. So I would either stay there after work or I'd go like party with a girl. And I would go back to my car. I'd take the bus to my car and change clothes and go to one of the nicest restaurants. Moved to New York, went to Momofuku. That changed my whole perspective on what I was doing as a chef. It made me feel like I'm part of a team again. It was diverse. It was like that punk rock dish is more of a lifestyle. Like we were professionals, and that's when it like turned up a little bit. And then I moved to Portland, Oregon. And kind of low key, like I cooked at every restaurant Portland had, but like I went strictly art and did pop-ups every now and then, like in illegal spaces. We'd get tickets. I think the entire time I was learning how to be a chef, I only cooked European American cuisine. Like I didn't know where I fit in the culinary world until I moved back to Alabama. And then I found my wedge. I found a voice to like what my food is and what I could serve and what I would call like a dish that made sense. And that's when like art and food kind of gelled up. When I moved back here, I was like, I want to tell my own story a little bit. Like I want to talk about like crack and like, I'm tired of talking about the 60s and the 50s. I want to talk about the 80s and the 90s. Like let's talk about New Jack City and like what crack did. Like crack really affected me. My dad was a crackhead. Uncle was a crackhead. Everybody was a crackhead, like everybody. I remember growing up in Chicago and seeing our family was so well together. Like the whole community was great. It was like being in the Cosby Show. And then when crack hit, like 87, everything, you had to grow up so much faster, Like you ended up being a protector of your own. That was really weird. A kid shouldn't have to, at age 10, you just don't want to do all that. And I'm trying to tell that story of negligence, of like, how do you build a community out of like just being numb, you know? Because like, if you go through all that, 26 years, 27 years, whatever, trying to hit a level of excellence for someone else's vision, trying to code shift or whatever in order to get in the door in those places, in order to be seen in the art world, in order to do all that. You go through the crack era and you grow up a little bit too fast. Like you're in a racial date, you get shot by a Klan. Like you get really numb and like sterile, and you forget that you are a representation of where you come from. So I felt like it was time to tell a weird like black punk rock, like folk art kind of story. And that's where the narrative got deeper. I always wanted to figure out how to like incorporate the food culture part of me into the painting without being like, I paint apples. I can't even paint an apple. But so the only way I could think about that was to use the spices that make recipes delicious and figure out how to make pigments out of them. And then, so that became like turmeric, black pepper. When I worked at Rodney Scott's, we started building our own charcoal. And I was like, oh man, I could take that home, pulse it up in a food processor and use that as my charcoal and like dust my paintings. And it also will tell a story about regionality and the Creole-ness of who I am. I've learned so much about the South through, I learned more about regions through food than I do anything, obviously, but luckily I still cook private affairs where I work at a farm. Sometimes like I can still dig deeper of like the origins of where things come from. And I'm using produce to create my own pigments. Like it just gets weirder. But I would say the more I dig deeper, the more I enjoy the Southeast, because it's more, I know the truth. Almost, as much as I think. I can believe in something that I think is true. If I'm gonna create legacy in some sense of, not a monetary gain at all, obviously, but in some sense of that's gonna last long and my work can hit museums and be on a wall, beyond the ingredients that go into it, it better have an amazing story that encompasses like what I thought about the time of my region and like what it expresses. And my kids, if they don't like it or not, they'll be able to be like, that's his stuff. He was talking about this. He was so angry. He loved okra, you know?